Well, they're kicking things off here this week. Of course, last week we kind of left off with the idea that, we aren't going to see a lot of precipitation, specifically snow for people getting their white Christmas ahead of, this week with Christmas. Seems to be the case for things moving forward here for a little bit for the short term. We
Yeah.
also left off with the fact that, we're going to talk about temperatures here later today, but also those rising temperatures, getting a lot of that moisture or snow that we did have previously, getting that soaked into the ground. Kind of where is that leaving us in terms of, making sure that we're seeing good soil moisture here, kind of a late December push for some better moisture conditions in some areas, but not so much for other areas. So what do you have for us here as we look here for the short term?
Yeah, you brought up the snow. I think it's important we look at this. So this is a season to date snowfall total map. So it just kind of looks at how much we've had. And to be honest, much of the Midwest, upper Midwest, Great Lakes, lake effect area has been hit pretty hard. It's mostly been the western mountains that are behind. I mean, I looked this morning at the upper Colorado Basin, which is here, and it is the second lowest snowpack to this point in December in the last decade. And so therefore we're getting concerned about the snowpack in the West. Now it's going to change in a big way if you're along California. We got two major winter storms coming into California later on this week. I mean, big ones. But the question is, back to the snow, what happened when we got all this mild air back into place here in the Midwest? A lot of that melted. And I can show you some of the changes we've seen out of it. So this was on December 1st, what the soil moisture looked like. And you can see throughout much of the Midwest, upper Midwest, it was low. Same thing down here for parts of the Southeast. Well, since then, just watch the maps change. As that snow has melted in, we've started to see some improvement. Now, that improvement has not come to a lot of the plains where we've remained very dry. If you have a look at the month-to-date precip stats, you can see that for most of the month, high pressure sat right here. The flow came around the top, hit the northwest, dove through Montana, and then just kind of rolled east like this. And we just could not return Gulf moisture into these states, which is why we've seen such dry weather in the central United States as of late. And unfortunately, as we look out there at the forecast, that's your next 7 days. Now, like I said, I got a big storm system coming through early this week, another big one around Christmas coming through. But you see the direction I drew the arrows? They're north-south. If we wanted to get something into the plains, it's got to do that. And we're just not seeing that. And that's why this huge section of the Great Plains, Midwest United States is dry. And we can also see the Southeast is drier because storm systems are going to ride the top and develop into the Northeast. But that's it. So that's your next week. If I add another week to it, you can now look at this map. So this is a precipitation anomaly map. And what do we see? We again see these areas showing up drier the farther out we look, and that gets us all the way to the 5th of January. Now, I want you to keep the 5th of January in mind because I think as we get to the 6th, 7th, and 8th of January, things are going to start to change. But between now and then, I mean, the probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch, well, it's Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, parts of Nebraska, Colorado. There's pockets of those states that are at a 90% or better chance at staying under 1/10 of an inch. It's also drier in the southeast. Now, there are wetter spots, and the wetter spots are in the west. They're partly in the northeast as well, but that's the chance of going over an inch. And we're talking about significant flooding into California, as even just in the next 4 to 5 days, we've got over 8 inches of liquid equivalent getting into parts of the mountains out west, which means huge snowfall totals. So if you have a look at it here, this is snow all the way through December 31st. And it's going to hit two big systems in California. The Northern Rockies picking up some, the Cascades are picking up some, but I need to see big totals here in order to stop worrying about the Colorado River. Outside of that, it's all along and north of Highway 16 and then getting into Ontario, clipping parts of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the UP. But take a look, the Northeast, we might be packing a bit more snow into there as well. So that's kind of it. Like the pattern is no big storm systems in the midsection of the country. They're kind of painting the corners, some here and then some here, and that seems to be about it. On the temperature side of things, this is where we've been since Thanksgiving. So very cold east, very hot west. I mean, let's just rephrase that. Cold east, mild west, comparing them to historical averages here. But as you know, things are changing rapidly. Here's today's forecast high temperatures. We have 70s as far north as southern South Dakota. As we get into tomorrow, that's Tuesday the 23rd, 24th. I mean, Christmas Eve, 71 in St. Louis, 75 in Norman, 77 in Amarillo. I will take note that there's a pretty sharp northern divide to this. So, I mean, Iowa, you may have a 20 to 30 degrees spread of temperatures across the state on December 24th, but that's your Christmas Day temperature forecast. And I was just talking to a friend of mine over in Western Illinois this morning. He knows my grandmother who lives there. He's like, "Well, what's the plan?" I said, "Well, first of all, my grandma's happy as can be because we're all going to be able to show up because there's no weather problems." And I said, "Secondly, I'm going to wear like my Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt because I mean, this is so mild for this time of year." But I'm thinking about this, Dawson. I'm curious your opinion on this. I mean, this is multiple days in Kansas of 60s and 70s. Like we're growing wheat here. I don't know. This is me just being an idiot, not understanding wheat. But could we come out of dormancy with a week of 60s and 70s in December? I mean, I don't know. Can it do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the soil moisture temperatures would get up enough to where
Yeah.
it would do that, but I wonder if it's still on the minds of some people when it comes to these temperatures, like the surface air surface temperatures being that high.
Yeah, I don't know, and I shouldn't be laughing because it could be a serious thing.
Yeah.
But I've just, I guess my laughter is in like I don't usually use this part of my color bar in December, and I mean this
Hmm.
is just very, very mild. Now let's keep going. This is the Friday after Christmas. This is getting into Saturday and Sunday, and I do want to watch this corridor, okay, the Upper Midwest into the Northeast, because the farther out we look, we just kind of play this forward. We seem to see the storehouse of cold air is here. The Yukon, Western Canada, part of the Canadian Prairie and Alaska. But I think there is outlet for this cold air coming into this area while we maintain our warmer conditions here as we go forward. You'll see that as I play it out. You know, it seems to be the case going forward. Now, real quick, and I want to turn it back over to you. The Climate Prediction Center gave us their early January outlook. I'd make some modifications. Okay, this is just me. I love these guys; they're brilliant. I would confine the warmth here, but I would tell you that any warmth that comes into this section of the Midwest will be transitory. You get 1 or 2 days of warm conditions, and then boom, it comes out of the north like this and just rocks it all the way into the Northeast United States. I would also say that I'm a bit more concerned about the dryness in this area unless next week, late next week, we get a trough that breaks through this region, which is a possibility. Otherwise, we could be just looking at longer duration dryness here all the way into the southeast as well. But if I had to put a pin in it, I'd say if you're here at the beginning of January, you're going to have access to cold air and you're going to have access to clippers, which means snow. So that's kind of how I see things shaping up here in the near to medium term with respect to precip and temperatures.
All right, so you're gearing us up for that long range again. Is what are we still expecting for that time frame of January, February, March, in terms of just making sure that we do still have access to moisture in places that we've kind of been expecting it, which I know we're still talking about that northwest divide or
Yeah.
east-west divide on, where that precipitation is actually going to be during that time frame. Kind of what are we looking at for that part moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the Christmas Day through January 24th. So that's a 30-day window. This is the new European model. And I would just tell you that a lot of what you see here is coming in the next 10 days. After that, I think most of the action is going to be in the Northwest, and we're going to get back into like clipper mode. Question is this. That's almost hinting that there might be some least cyclogenesis coming through here. But why is this so dry if you're going to get a storm system to come through that area? That's going to be the tricky thing to figure out. I just don't see the pattern relinquishing control enough to develop a subtropical jet to rip this all up and make it just wet as can be down there. And what's interesting is the Climate Prediction Center agrees with me on that. If you just have a look, this is their new seasonal drought outlook. And through March 31st, they've got part of the Sun Belt, the Cotton Belt, the Southeast on the drier risk going forward. Now, as we go forward, I do want to point out La Nina is still there. Okay. There's still a La Nina going, and it's probably at its peak. But I went looking for years that I thought were behaving like this La Nina, and I found two that I like. Now, there are others that are close, but I'm thinking hard about 2009, partly because of the ocean temperatures. I mean, here's this year. That's 2009. But partly because of the way the temperature pattern in December and now into January is evolving. I think maybe a closer analog could be 2018. So I'm talking January 2018. So here's our current ocean temperatures. There's 2018. And why I'm thinking this is because look what happened when you combine 2009 and 2018 and say, well, tell me how January's temperatures are going to be. They took that mild back west and opened up this corridor to chances of seeing Arctic air. Not this doesn't mean cold every day, but coming back. So what do you get? You get wet in the northwest and then clippers that kind of roll through. I think that could be the case. Now, does the Climate Prediction Center agree? Well, let's go look at their 3 month outlook. That's their prediction for January. Excuse me, that's their January outlook. That's similar to mine. And their January, February, March looks something like this. Now, I'll be honest with you. If you ever took my class, Dawson, back at University of Illinois, and I gave you a box of crayons after teaching about La Nina and say, draw me a map of winter precipitation and temperature patterns when there's a La Nina. If you listen in class, you would draw this. This is exactly what you draw. And I'm just saying, this La Nina is at peak and is going to fade faster than normal. So they know this. They're not stupid at the Climate Prediction Center. It is just what might it mean going forward? Because look, they put it up the top headline. La Niñas continued to favor, but INSO neutral most likely January to March. See, they're finding it as well, but they don't have an overwhelming signal to tell them to not draw the maps like this. So that's kind of where we're going to sit on this forecast, and most long range models are going to look like that. I'll just make a point again, Dawson. I would go look hard at 2018 for the second half of winter. But I don't want 2018 to get ingrained in everybody's head. Neither do I want 2009 to get ingrained in everyone's head as the way spring and summer are going to pan out. I don't know that those analogs last into spring and summer. I've got to see how the El Nino evolves. If the El Nino gets on its horse and by late spring we've got El Nino like conditions, oh, then I think we have another discussion to have. I'm using 18 and '09 primarily for January, February, March. So that's kind of what I wanted to make sure everybody heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really interesting too. I mean, we're talking about something that far out that there might be some influences on that for how things could shape up, but ultimately we don't know. Is
Yeah.
there any so moving down to South America though, wanting to kind of get a little bit of a last minute gauge of kind of how things are going down there. Got a report this morning that Brazilian farmers have started harvesting soybeans in some areas, and so far things look to be shaping up fairly well. So, what are you seeing down there?
Well, I see this. I like this website. It's called worldagweather.com. And this is, if you want to put together a recipe for a successful crop, you just want variability, right? Get warm, but then cool. You don't want it to get persistent and stuck because too wet, too dry, too hot, too cold, that crop doesn't want that. So take a look. This is all of Brazil's soybean growing area and temperatures. It goes hot, then cool, hot, then cool, hot, then cool, hot. I'm seeing it's like sawtooth just going up and down. And that's part of it. Then you look at the last 60 days of precip, like, oh, wait, they're dry. I'm like, well, they were dry in November. But what's November to the soybeans? Is that like putting dryness on your beans in May and June? And then if July comes along and it rains, I mean, look at this. Look at the December rains.
Mhm.
That slope matches the average. So moisture came on, and as a result, things look pretty good. I could tell you that I could find problems. I think Goiás might be one of the drier spots, but they had good early December rains. Um, and you say, well, what about the forecast? Well, the next 15 days for the whole of Brazil, it's kind of looking right on average. Now, there are places like there's Mato Grosso, like, oh, well, Mato Grosso is a little drier later. Well, okay. What about Goiás? Drier, but on the whole, I think other areas are kind of making up for it. So you talked about folks harvesting. Well, they're probably harvesting in northern Mato Grosso. And the NDVI right there is the highest since 2001. So you say, what's this crop look like? Well, I just picked their state that does 33% of their production, and it looks pretty darn good. And I think you add all the states together, and you're not going to be able to find massive kind of holes in the precipitation, holes in the where the temperatures are cranked up, and therefore dropped yield. I would tell you that I think it is worthwhile watching Buenos Aires and the province that contains Cordoba going forward, which is here. Their NDVI values are okay. Now remember, they peak much later. They have a growing season kind of more like ours. So we got time for them. But the reason why I'm watching it is that over the next 10 days, there seems to be a pretty sharp divide on where it's really, really wet. But from Cordoba over to Buenos Aires, relatively dry. But you're going, wait, whoa, what's going on here? Well, that's fine. It's a little drier in an area that's got decent moisture. And then we are seeing every model by the time we get into week two, bringing the moisture back. So where's that problem? That's that up down nature. So I just have to say, I am not going to be waiting on Brazil to flag some sort of major issue when I see weather like this, I'm going to have to be looking for something else to maybe move the markets. Now, there could be a market moving event though. It could come in the safrinha crop. And all I'm going to tell you is I can't think of a time recently where I've seen, 7 straight months of excellent weather across Brazil, right? So now this is not how we forecast, but if you kind of have to imagine, well, if you're getting all the good rains and everything now, what does that mean for March, April, and May, which is critical for safrinha crop? Look at the Corn Belt. We had all that great rain June, July, and then nothing in August and September. So the atmosphere kind of tends to do that. The difference is this is a rainforest, right? I mean, so it's tropical in nature, and as a result, we just have to take all that with a grain of sand.
Yeah, I mean, too, when you look down at Argentina specifically, they're still finishing up harvesting a wheat crop down there,
Wheat,
and
yeah.
they've just had access to a huge amount of moisture, just optimal moisture throughout the season. And to your point, yeah, they're looking at some potentially drier conditions here moving forward for the short term. But yeah, it's like how much can they sustain that because they've just had that access to plenty of
And
moisture for such a long time, an entire growing
and
season
they
for
have
a
the
crop.
soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have the soil too. So it's like,
Mhm.
well, okay. So I'm going to be patient with South America.
Yeah, definitely. Finding a weather problem down there has been ha is having to use a magnifying glass for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But well, always appreciate your insights. Eric, I believe we're going to be off for next week, so we'll be talking as soon as the calendar flips to January. So going to be looking forward to those conversations here moving forward. And again, as always, thank you.
Yeah, take care, Dawson. Have a good Christmas and a good start to 2026.